cool. Okay, yeah, I'll take a look at this thing. And then you sent the email, and I was like, I just watched it. I think I told you like the next day or maybe 2 days later, I was emailing you going, yeah, we're doing it. So, because and this is something living here, and I always say, I mean, we need to be listening to each other. And one thing that we do at this film festival is we work with a lot of the film festivals in town, and our co-founder Michael Caine always says this, and this is something he's been in my life for 20-something years, and we always say this: we'd rather be co-competitors than competitors. And I feel like that. So this film sort of embodies that same thing. Like, yeah, we have our differences, but we can work together for a common good and the common good. So this is what we're working on. So Lance, you and your brother made this film. So what brought you to Cory Booker? Wrong black dude. What brought you to Van? What brought you to the project?
We started working on the film, like, I guess officially you could say we started working on it in 2016, even pre-election. And I guess unofficially you could say we started working on it in a sense in 2014, which is when we met Van. And through the course of getting to know Van, we kind of found that we had this, we're very different in a million different ways, but we had this shared interest that surprised me to learn about Van in trying to tell honest stories about these fights for social justice. And we just discovered through just building a relationship together first on our first film, which is called City of Trees, and then through this mini series that we made together called The Messy Truth, where Van basically went to the homes of Trump supporting families pre-2016 election to try at least to have conversations across divides and just see if you could model how to have some form of like respectful dialogue with people you disagree with. And then on the other side of the 2016 election, just being with Van, listening to him talk about and think about what kind of leader, what kind of place he wanted to occupy in this new reality of the Trump administration. And just feeling like he was someone who was gonna consistently, kind of run into the fire to try and do what he thought was right. We felt like there weren't too many people trying to do what he was trying to do. There weren't also too many people trying to tell stories like that. We felt like that was an important story to tell, and that whether or not he was successful, if we could tell the story honestly, there could be things we could learn from it. And we just felt like that was, to us, from a filmmaking standpoint, really important. And thank God he believed in that too. And
yeah, I was wondering about that. So how did you convince him to all right, we're going to give you some full access to how the sausage is made? I mean, that's because this is sort of like an action movie in a way. Like, okay, this is how bills are made. I mean, it's like really it is. Like, wow, it's a lot of work to get something like this pushed through. So, what was the conversations with Van? Like, hey, we're going to make this happen. We need to be in that room with you and Jared Kushner. We need to be in these places with you.
Well, I really appreciate you saying that it's like an action movie. No one said that. I really take that to heart.
Yeah.
It's a really nice compliment. One of the things that Van told us initially back in like early 2017 was he said something like, guys, my life is very dramatic, but it's not cinematic. He's like, so I don't know how the hell you are gonna make a movie. And like, I don't know who's gonna watch that movie. And he so he was almost kind of, whether or not that was his way of trying to push us away, I think there was a lot of truth to that too, because in a lot of cases, like, this is a movie about meetings. Like, when you actually step back, like, most of the scenes in this movie are like meetings or conversations. And, we've all been in meetings before. And how many of you have seen a movie, would want a movie made about your meetings? So I think that there was some of that just like kind of skepticism, like, how could this be a story? But then beyond that, I mean, there was just all sorts of distrust, less coming from Van and more just coming from like everyone else, whether it was the people in the communities in West Virginia and LA, whether it was the politicians, like just everyone. It almost just seemed like, as much as Van was ice skating uphill in a lot of the work he was doing, then from an access standpoint, we basically had the same problem. So there's a lot of stories about how, I'd say this, and I'm not making this up, it's like every scene in that movie, there was a fight to get that scene on camera, but it was a fight of effort. It wasn't a fight like of, actually being combative. It was just that there was a lot of forces basically leading us to not do it. And the thing that we came back to every single time was just to be direct, be transparent, be clear, represent ourselves. Like we had a mantra that we're never gonna try to get anyone. It's not a gotcha film.
Yeah.
Like we're just trying to be clear with people. And we spent a lot of time with people without cameras, and then just hung out and spent time, and ultimately
That is
built
an interesting.
trust.
That's an interesting deal, because I was thinking these are politicians who, I mean, everything about politics now feels like it, that it's very face and like in what you may do to harm or help, and so you have this camera crew coming in that could do either one of those things. So trust seems to be important. I'm wondering what you weren't allowed to do that you wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like if there was.
I'll give you an example.
Okay.
So, like, in the scene that maybe all you remember with Kellyanne Conway in the movie, so when we were on phone calls with the Trump administration legal counsel, the same people you all were like probably reading about in the news, we were talking with them to navigate how to get access to film the group going to the White House. And they were very adamant that you cannot film the meeting with Kellyanne. Okay, well, that was the point of the whole scene, was to film the meeting with Kellyanne. So, we pushed and pushed and pushed as much as we could to say, we need this. This is the whole point. This is why they're coming to DC, is to meet with Kellyanne.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't budge. So we said, okay, well, is Kellyanne gonna greet them before the meeting or anything like that? She said, well, yeah, she likes to do that. She likes to like get people together and have like a circle before. We're like, oh, okay, we'll film that. And how long does that last? It's usually 5-10 minutes. How long's the meeting? 45? Okay. We don't need to be in the meeting. Can we just be there for the circle when she greets everyone? I say, oh, that's fine. Nothing really happens there. Okay, that's fine. So that's the scene, is the greeting. And then, it's like a little kind of gently touched on that you see the door close. And then that was our way of almost just acknowledging, like, we didn't have access to the meeting, but we just trusted the viewers could put two and two together. And so there's a lot of like things like that happen where it's like, we'd ask for a lot, we get a little, breadcrumb, we say, we'll take that. And that's kind of how a lot of those scenes were made.
And that was actually a pretty powerful scene near the end of the film. So this is a question and answer, so I can keep asking questions. But if anybody has any questions in the audience, I can see everybody up into the back row. So just raise your hand and I'll call on you. So you and your brother making films. Oh, there's a question. Oh, shoot, right there. Sorry.
Great job, by the way. That was really earnest piece of filmmaking, and I think you captured Van Jones's earnestness himself really well. So just wanted to say that. My question was that I really loved the deep dive into his personal strife and with his family and the workaholicism still felt like it was, and his isolation. Was that preconceived that you wanted to dive into that side of him, or was that kind of organically come about during production when you started to see these struggles and you started spending time with him? Was that intentional, I suppose, or just came about naturally?
It was more, I think it was something that unfolded. It's like we knew Van, we met him in 2014. He was known, but not as known as he is now. But we met him because we were working on this independent film together that no one ever heard of. So it's like, we didn't have a relationship with him through CNN or through his like more public persona. So we had a little window into some of the sides of him that you see in the film, but it was really small. And when we started filming, for the first step, none of that side of him was really like in the kinds of things we were filming. It was very public things. Like, actually, last time I was in Dallas was in 2017, when Van was doing a speaking tour. It's called the We Rise Tour, and he came to Dallas and like 10 or 12 other cities, was doing speeches, and we were like filming the speeches. And he spoke at the Women's March, and we filmed that. So like we were kind of seeing more of the public side of Van, and got a lot of material of that, and none of that is in the movie. But I think over time, just through spending a lot of time with Van, we would see more of his own kind of personal struggle. We'd have a greater window into it. You know, sometimes like after a speech, he'd say, hey, why don't you guys come up to my room and just hang out for a little bit? No cameras. We would talk for a couple hours and just see kind of what he was dealing with. And we did that time and time and time again, until at a certain point, is really to my brother's credit, he just started, I forget what it was, but he had a bad day on social media, and Brandon, my brother, was like, Van, would you mind if we filmed with you like today? And then he's like, yeah, at that point, like, okay, but I don't know what you're gonna do. Same thing, like, I don't know what you're gonna do with this. But then it was like, we started kind of doing that more, and just made sure every time that he was comfortable with it. So my brother, he's a very communicative person, and he'd always say, Van, like, this is why I think this is important. Like, this is why I want to film with you in this moment. If you don't want to, it's completely fine, but I just want to tell you why I think it's important in the movie. And, you know, it was ultimately always his choice, and it was just something that kind of unfolded to the point where then things were happening in his life where he would call us, and he'd say, you know, this thing's, you know, like even with his mom's funeral, the only reason we were really there was because he called us and said, you know, I would like to have you guys there. So, you know, it became kind of like an evolution, I guess. And there was a lot of conversation in between about what was okay.
So, yeah, Rebecca.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it as well. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Did you become very close personal friends with them during the filming after?
We definitely became very close, I would say, like certainly much closer than we were at the onset. Van knows a lot about me. You know, I think that was part of it, was like, you know, I feel like I had to put a lot of myself out there as well. You know, I think that part of the deceit of a documentary is that, you know, especially a film like this, is that you have everyone else on the screen and then I'm not on the screen. And behind, it's like, it feels like a deceit, because it's almost like I feel like it's only fair that I should be on there too. And it's something I'm not, you know, I'm at odds with that, to be honest, because behind the scenes, like we were all just getting to know each other quite deeply, both like Van and then certainly everyone in West Virginia and LA. They're all friends, talk to them regularly. So I think that was just part of what was required to tell a story like this. So it's not journalism, it's not, I don't know what it is, you know, but I think that also that closeness is what allowed us to, you know, challenge the people in the film too, and knowing that they could trust us. Like almost like, I guess, with family who you love, who you can have a hard conversation with and still know like we can go to a hard place, but it's for the betterment of our relationship, or because we love each other, or whatever. I think that's kind of how, you know, we all feel. But you know, I think we've been criticized too. Like the film, I mean, to be honest, like the film has also been criticized by people who think that the film is almost too soft on Van. You know, or it's been called a vanity project. I leave it to all of you to decide if that's the case. But so I think that probably that the closeness that I think we established, that to me made for like richer storytelling, is also something that not everyone's looking for. So.
Right there.
Thank you for the film. I liked your comment about it seeming like an action film. For me, it also felt very dramatic and anxious, because these meetings are my first time feeling like I'm walking through the White House since January 6th.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think that may enhance the meaning of the film in any way? Then the audience is thinking in hindsight about this year?
Well, what do you think? I mean, how did it sit with you in that sense?
My heart's still racing.
Uh-huh.
I'm having trouble.
Uh-huh.
You want some? I can get some water.
Yeah,
I don't want you to have an issue here. I want to take care of it.
Like, I appreciate the comment. I mean, it's, you know, it was, there's a lot to say. Yeah, I think it has taken, it already had the kind of symbolism and the weight and also the tension or pain of those scenes was already about as acute as we could have imagined it being. And the editors of the film would remind us of that constantly because they watched those scenes thousands of times, you know, and so they were basically being re-traumatized in a lot of cases, or just dealing with all these emotions time and time again. That was all before January 6th. So I like, you know, I'm born in DC, I've lived in DC most of my life, and for me, I think one of the most important things in this regard for the film to offer is a window into the right way to deal with those buildings and deal with the people who work in those buildings. It's like, go through the front door, knock, set up a meeting, talk to people eyeball to eyeball with pens and paper, not with guns and flagpoles. Like, that's what it's set up to do. And I love the fact that Washington DC is a place where you don't have to be big and famous to get a meeting with some of these people. You have Van on your side, it helps, but it's not a requirement. And I think that one of the many aspects of the affront of January 6th was seeing just an abuse of that principle that to me is just such a precious part of the democracy. So I hope it could be a model people can see, like, oh, that's how you do it. And that's actually how you get stuff done too, is to do it that way.
You got a question?